In Chicago's Grant Park, there's a statue by Augustus St. Gaudens of Abraham Lincoln represented as head of state. The park, originally known as Lake Park, has been reserved as open space since the city's earliest years. The Greeks would have called this a temenos, an open space reserved, cut off or carved out from the stuff around it. The Roman Forum was a place like that, and even in its ruined state, it still is today. The name Chicago gave to the park in the early 20th century, honoring the Civil War General Ulysses S. Grant, isn't unrelated to the name of the city's main train station, Union Station, just to the west of the Central Business District. There are many Union stations in the United States, honoring both the Union victory in the Civil War, but also the unifying role of the railroad for the vast American territories settled in the 19th century. Lincoln is the favorite son of the state that Chicago is in, Illinois. He looks south towards the reintegrated Confederacy, but also toward the sun and the light. Framed by a Greek exedra, almost a kind of theater designed by Stanford White, he sits in classical Doric dignity. All of these aspects of the place we can stand in today were choices made over time by a society that valued the symbolic role of public space. And they were meant to be memorable, which is why we call them memorials. They mark our world with places of significance and recall significant events. And they spoke in a language of art and architecture that we call classical, a language we're still able to read, even if it's less often spoken today. Overlooking Grant Park are many elegant buildings lining Michigan Avenue, some of them commercial, others cultural. Above the building, now named for Motorola, but originally known as the Railway Exchange Building, the architect Daniel Burnham built a penthouse from which he designed his ambitious master plan for the city of Chicago, published in 1909. Burnham's plan represents one of the last times modern American cities were actually designed. What Burnham did was what the great artists and architects and patrons of the Renaissance did: treat the city as a great work of art, which could be designed, even incrementally, to represent their society's values and aspirations, and make the city memorable. In this course, we'll consider how Rome, from the 15th through the 18th century, was made a memorable place by recalling in its architecture and spaces the memory of its past, while still looking toward the future. When you walk through Rome in the Renaissance and Baroque, you encountered a myriad of stories being told, and you remembered them because they were told so beautifully. For the ancients, our sight was our most powerful sense, and it was a visual mnemonic or memory technique that the ancients used and that the Renaissance revived. Just as you imagine places in your minds to remember ideas and text, real places were invested with ideas in memorable ways, able to be read. We'll look closely at two memorable sites in Rome, the Campidoglio and the Tempietto, and see how they achieved this memorability by design.